Isshin Kurosaki, ladies and gentlemen, former captain of Squad 10, former head of a Shiba branch family, Ichigo Kurosaki's father, and Masaki's baby daddy. So what's the deal with his Bankai, huh? Although, before we get into that, I need to discuss something else, and also we're going to talk about his Zanpakuto in general, because there's a lot of stuff we need to go through there alone. But, before we get into any of that, I felt like I should bring up a very important topic, and that is Isshin's power level, or Isshin's, like, general power level, like, where he ranks amongst the other characters, right? Because we haven't seen that many fights that Isshin has been in. Really, we've only seen two serious ones. When he fought against Grand Fisher to kind of introduce him as a Shinigami, and that one was pretty much just Kubo's way of saying, okay, Isshin is a captain-level Shinigami, and that was, like, the big shocker at the moment, because up until that point, Isshin was kind of... yeah, so he shows up and slices up Grand Fisher in one hit. Okay, that's not a big deal because Grand Fisher was like an incomplete Arrancar at that point, and he was just kind of just raw power, so I think any captain would have been able to take him down pretty easily. The next major fight, though, he was in was against a little character. I don't know, he only showed up like once or twice in the series. I don't think he was that strong. Sosuke motherfucking Aizen! Yeah! So, just Aizen, nobody important, nobody really that strong, and he was able to hold his own against Aizen. Actually, not even just hold his own, he was able to beat him into submission. At least Aizen said he was beaten into submission, that, you know, after the fight with Isshin, he was like, looks like I've reached my limit as a Shinigami, and that's when the Hogyoku took over, and he started to take over his god form. Now, you could take that to mean a number of things, because Aizen is a tried-hard troll. You could say, oh, he was just fucking with Isshin, he really wasn't at his limit, he was just messing with him because now the Hogyoku was taking form. You could say, oh, well, this was also right after he got, you know, Kido blitzed out by Yamamoto, so maybe that, you know, aided to him a little bit, his weaknesses or something. But whether or not you want to say that he really managed to beat Aizen, at least the base form Aizen, into defeats, you also have to look just into that fight. Like, Aizen was a guy that managed to single-handedly pretty much curb stomp the entire Gotei 13. Well, not the entire Gotei 13, because, you know, Byakuya, Kenpachi, Mayuri, those guys weren't there, and then you had, like, Uketake, who was already out of the fight. But Soifone, Love, Sajin, Rose, you had Toshiro, like, all these guys, he was able to cut down. Shinji, just cut down, no problems, no fuss, no muss. Looked like he could have been fucking sipping a cup of tea while he did it. That's how easy he took those guys down. And then you have Isshin, just a one-on-one fight, and Isshin is fucking, like, flipping middle fingers, knocking him around like a freaking ragdoll. Aizen's throwing off Kido. Isshin manages to be on decent level with Aizen there. Another thing you could say is, since Aizen was in the middle of his Hogyoku transformation, therefore he wasn't fighting as effectively, or maybe he wasn't even trying because of the Hogyoku. He knew that the Hogyoku was gonna, you know, eventually cause him to evolve, and it was gonna heal all his injuries, so why should he bother fighting seriously? And, you know, even further than that, Aizen didn't even use his Zanpakuto. He didn't even use Kyokai Suigetsu in that fight, so that fight's kind of up in the air. It's kind of hard to tell. It's not easy to just say, oh, Isshin is stronger than Aizen because of X, Y, and Z, because Aizen could have had all this other shit going on. We don't really know. Yeah, I need to figure out another way to rank him. Yeah, too bad there's not, like, power levels in Bleach, you know, where I could say, you know, Isshin's power is over 9,000, which makes him stronger than these characters, but not quite as strong as these characters. I don't know. Oh, okay. Hey, here's a method. How about we just use the Espada as a ranking system? Okay, so here's my question to you. Which Espada, or, like, what highest rank Espada could Isshin manage to fight and defeat? Even if we're talking about, like, a really hard-fought battle, like, Isshin gets beaten down pretty severely, he has to go Bankai, he's kind of wounded at the end of it, but he manages to beat them, you know? Which Espada do you think he could take up to that point? You know, I don't know. I think I would say, okay, controversial judgment call. I'm going to say Ukiura, but only in his first released form. You know, because then we get into Segunde Etapa, and then we still have that discussion, like, should Ukiura have been stronger since he had Segunde Etapa? Maybe he was the first or second Espada by that power ranking. You know, I still think that Aizen was fully aware of Ukiura's abilities, even though if Ukiura never showed Aizen his Segunde Etapa, I'm sure Aizen was aware of it, and still ranked him as number 4th accordingly. Yeah, so I'm gonna say, you know, Isshin could, if he went into, like, his Bankai, he could defeat Ukiura only in his like first released form. We didn't really get to see much of that. But what are your opinions on that? Where are your rankings on this? You know, which one he could defeat? You know, he's like Grimmjow level, Noitora level. You know, where are we at there?
I say this, but also keep in mind that it's hard to determine the power level or potential of the top 3 Espada because they were all defeated in non-conventional ways. Holly-Belle was cut down by Aizen, who is obviously way stronger than her, and he took her by surprise, and he used his Kyokai Suigetsu. Baragon was defeated by a technique that was very unique to Hachigen, and I have my own problems with that, but basically Baragon was not the kind of guy that you could defeat through physical force, as we saw what happened with Soifone point-blank Chakaho Raikkoben, and he was still standing. And then you have Stark, who... Okay, I really don't want to talk about what happened with Stark. But then you have Yami, who is basically just a massive power, so I wouldn't really consider Yami the strongest Espada in terms of, like, intelligence or ability. He just had raw power, so maybe you can make an argument that Isshin would be strong enough to take down Yami. I can agree with that.
Alright, but now let's get into discussion about Isshin's Bankai and his Zanpakuto in general, Engetsu. Okay, so his Bankai was mentioned one time before. When he was fighting against Shiro during the flashback arc, Aizen appeared, and Aizen was basically invisible. He was wearing Uehara's Ryatsu cloak that he basically swagger jacked from him. So Aizen appears, cuts Isshin in the back, and that wounds him to the point where he can't use Bankai. And Aizen confirms this, and Isshin himself confirms this. He says, you know, he won't be able to go into Bankai with that injury, and Isshin confirms that as well, and he doesn't even attempt it. Now, at first you might be thinking, oh, he was injured so he can't use Bankai. That doesn't seem too weird. But then you start to think that that really doesn't make a lot of sense compared to the other Bankais that we have seen up to this point. Plenty of Shinigami have gone into Bankai when they were injured as shit. Soifone got her arm destroyed by Baragon. Her arm was aging and she had to get it cut off, but she was still able to use Bankai. Shunsui, during the final arc, he got turned into Swiss cheese by Lilia. He was bleeding pretty profusely. He could still use Bankai. Uehara got his freaking eye frapped by Askin. He went into Bankai just fine. So it's either a case of Aizen did something very specifically to Isshin, which hindered his ability of using Bankai, which I don't think that's the case, or Isshin's Bankai is something specifically that is tied so close to his physical body that any injuries on his body would make it either impossible or detrimental. We don't really know if it's one of the two. We don't know if it's like, damn, I got injured so I can't use Bankai, just 100% can't use it. Or if it's like, damn, I got injured. If I went into my Bankai now, I could do it, but it would cause something detrimental to my body, or it wouldn't function right, or I could risk killing myself, or I wouldn't be able to control it. We don't know if it's one of the two. But I want to say it's actually the latter. I want to say it's, you know, he could have went into Bankai, but if he did, it would create some sort of negative effect for either himself or the area around him, and he was fighting in the world of the living at the moment. So, his Shikai Engetsu is a fire-type Zanpakuto. It's Keto-based, it's fire-based. When he goes into his Shikai Engetsu, the sword itself does not change at all. It just erupts flames from all around him, and, you know, he can, you know, when he fought against Shiro, he made, like, a huge fire blade he was fighting it with. He used this really weird technique, and this kind of gives credence to believe that his Bankai is something closely tied to his body, which makes sense, considering we have Ichigo, who has abilities that are very similar to Isshin's, because that's where he got his powers from his father. You know, Ichigo's Bankai, what is it? It's a cloak that clings to his body. So Isshin's Bankai that is connected very closely to his body, I think that would make sense as well. He, like, licks up some of his blood, and then he, like, blows on it and his sword, and that results in this, like, huge flame sword explosion thing. Does anyone else find that odd? That he's licking, like, his blood is mixing with his Zanpakuto, and that's creating this big explosion. We never saw anybody's Zanpakuto ever function like that. Like, mixing the blood of their own bodies with their powers to make it stronger. That's something that's very similar, like, only to Isshin is that the case. So I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to say, like, his Bankai is very closely binded to his body. The way I've always viewed his Bankai as a theory is that when he goes into his Bankai, the flames, like he basically becomes the Human Torch. Like, the flames erupt from his entire body, and he turns into this crazy fucking fire demon, and, if he's injured while he's in that form, the fire would leak out of certain parts of his body and he wouldn't be able to manipulate it or control it as well. So he has to make sure, because that's kind of a detriment. You know, think about that. Like, I can't get injured at all and I can't use my Bankai. I mean, you're in a battle. It's like, oh shit, I got a cut on my knee. Well, can't use Bankai, shit. I mean, if it's that kind of a drawback, then you got to imagine his Bankai is going to be pretty damn up there. You know what I mean? In addition to that, he also has the ability of Getsuga Tensho, which is something that was also inherited by Ichigo. It's kind of odd because he used this technique apparently while the sword was in its sealed state against Aizen, you know? And when he used it against Aizen, maybe this is just because, well, in the anime, it's very clearly like the same technique as Ichigo does. Like, it's blue energy, it's the same thing. But if his Zanpakuto is like fire-based, I can understand it being Getsuga Tensho, like it's fire erupting, but not the same thing that Ichigo does. So maybe that's just a thing with the anime, but even in the manga, when Isshin uses Getsuga against Aizen, it still kind of looks like the same kind of thing that Ichigo does, not really fire-based. You know, I can understand Isshin using Getsuga because, well, his sword, because like I said, his sword doesn't change. It just, when he goes into Shikai, it just erupts fire. So, makes sense, but it doesn't make sense why it would take that appearance while he's using it against Aizen. But then again, going by that same kind of logic, we never really got a confirmation on what color Isshin's flames were in the manga. At least I don't think we did. I don't think we got like a color page or anything. So for all we know, when Isshin goes into Shikai and gets, it could be blue fire that shoots out. Yeah. Doesn't that make Isshin out to be a little bit more cool? But also, yeah, it would make sense for the Getsuga, but that's just, like, color schemes, really, I have a problem with. I'm just trying to make sense about, you know, Getsuga Tensho, and if his Zanpakuto is fire-based, which Ichigo's clearly is not, even if they share the same technique, it should be a little bit different. That's basically what I'm saying there. Also, you have to consider this little detail, okay? So Isshin fights against Aizen, and then Aizen's like, alright, Hogyoku's taken over, I'm going into my transformation. At this point, Yoruichi and Urahara show up, and then it's like Yoruichi, Urahara, and Isshin that all fight against Aizen. Now, they all get beaten down at some point. You all see them kissing the ground at some point, but Isshin just he kind of like stumbles back to his feet, and Ichigo has to kind of help him up. But then he's like, you know, open a Senkai gate. And then the next scene, they're running through the Dangai, and Isshin is just like, okay, I'm gonna use my Ryatsu to contain the current for about 3 months. I have enough I just got into a fight with Aizen, just got beaten down by God Aizen, but I still have enough Ryatsu to maintain this place for 3 months while you train. Kind of a very large amount of Ryatsu Isshin has there. One more thing we have to discuss, and it is when they are training in the Dangai. It's when Isshin is teaching Ichigo the Final Getsuga, and of course he has that line with Engets next to him, and he's like, my Zanpakuto was the same way. Our Zanpakutos do not want to teach us these techniques. Now, I don't know where to go from this. I really don't. Because the way it's seeing is like Isshin had a Final Getsuga too. And maybe his Engets did not teach it to him, but Isshin still was aware of what it did and what happened after you used it. That you lose your Shinigami powers. Okay? So Isshin tried to learn it, but his Zanpakuto didn't teach it to him. But if we're going by that, because Isshin, up to that point, was, well, not up to that point, but for most of his life, he was a pure Shinigami. So does that mean that all Shinigami have the ability of, like, the final form of their Zanpakutos? The way I could think of it, maybe after he met with Masaki and the Hollow powers became tethered to Isshin's own powers, maybe that's how Final Getsuga came into vogue. You know, he had these Hollow powers to begin with already after he melded with Masaki, and then that changed his Zanpakuto somewhat, and then that's how he gathered his Final Getsuga, and then he tried to learn it, and then Getsu's just like, fuck no. And then that's how he knew about it with Ichigo, because I find it very hard to believe that Isshin, just as a normal Shinigami, would have that ability. I find it hard to believe that any Shinigami, like, yeah, Soifone, this is the final Jakuhorai Koben, or you have, I don't know, Toshiro, this is the final Daigaran Hirimaru, the final Ryusenka. And I don't see that happening, you know? Maybe there's, like, few exceptions with that, like, I don't know, look at Kenpachi, but I don't see see that being like the standard for all Zanpakuto. Like, you know, you have a final move that you use and then you deplete all your Ryatsu and then you lose your Shinigami powers. I think it's only because of Ichigo, because, you know, he's like a crossbreed, and then Isshin because he was melded with hollow powers, and that's kind of what modified it. But only when you have that sort of thing going on, that's when you gain access to these extra abilities. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to discuss about Isshin. He's ridiculously strong. We don't know how strong, but ridiculously strong. His Zanpakuto, his Bankai is rather unique in that it has some tie to his physical body, relating to his blood, relating to, you know, he can't use it if there's any injuries. That he has Final Getsuga capabilities, and, you know, Getsuga Tensho and everything like that. That's what I wanted to discuss, because he's showing back up in the series again right now, of course. He appeared at the end of chapter 674. So we're probably going to get to see what his Bankai is, so I just wanted to jumpstart the conversation now to get some theories out there on what his Bankai is. And if his Bankai does turn out to be like a Human Torch sort of thing, then, you know, I could always link everyone back to this video and be like, I was right, just with the Kenpachi Bankai thing, or Kenpachi Zanpakuto thing. So, yeah, you gotta set things up in advance, you know? And if it isn't the case, then I'll just delete this video and no one will ever know. Shh! Nobody knows! Shut up! No! No! Where are you going? Get over here! Get over here! Get the fuck over here!